Hey, Marc Millan here. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. And it's fall season. You can see some of the colors that my wife has put up here in the house. And I love this time of year. And I just wanted to take a moment and talk about the importance of Thanksgiving in worship. The importance of Thanksgiving in worship. Psalm 100, probably the clearest written chapter in all of the Psalms, where David talks about entering his gates with thanksgiving, enter his courts with praise. In some of the other Psalms, he goes deeper to eventually say, come, let us bow down, let us kneel before our Maker. But I love the idea of entering the gates with thanksgiving. In the Old Testament, they used to have a tent where they would meet and gather and bring their offerings because they wanted to have a relationship with God. And I think because it's the Old Testament and there's kind of this mysterious kind of veiled truth to the way the old sanctuary was, sometimes we could miss so much power in that. So entering the gates, there was these gates that entered into the tent that was built, the tabernacle of Moses. And if you wanted to have a relationship with God, if you wanted to have intimacy with Him, you brought an offering. That offering had descriptions to it. It's all laid out in the book of Leviticus. You would get your offering, you'd bring your animal, you'd bring your sacrifice. It would be received by the priest at the gate, and then they would inspect it, and then they would offer it. They were the ones who would actually help, and they would offer it to God by putting it on the altar and burning the animal sacrifice, or if it was a different type of sacrifice, they would put it on there. It was the priest who would actually complete the tactical side of the offering, but the person came to the tabernacle with a heart of thanksgiving. That's what the psalmist says. Come with a heart of thanksgiving. Why? The offering simply represented what God would provide for us later on. And I think that's the part where we can forget. This is the first part of Thanksgiving, I think, that's so important for us. When we're worshiping and when we're leading worship, even within our teams, thanksgiving is powerful. So if I came to the tabernacle with an offering to give to God, I came with thanksgiving because by faith, I was believing that this offering wasn't the thing that was going to save me. This offering wasn't the thing that would make me right with God. This offering wasn't the thing that would take away my sinfulness. But it was an act of faith on my part to believe that God one day would provide the offering for me. And so entering the gates with thanksgiving is me remembering that God has provided a way for me to have a relationship with Him through His Son, Jesus Christ. That is foundational to worship. So that's the first part of Thanksgiving that's so important in leading worship, is remembering that God has provided that sacrifice. The second part is enter His courts with praise. So when I come into the tabernacle, right, staying in this tabernacle of Moses, I come to the gates with thanksgiving. God, I thank you. I'm thankful. I'm giving thanks in my mind and in my heart because you have provided a way for me to have a relationship with you. Something I could never accomplish. I couldn't earn righteousness. I couldn't fulfill the law. I couldn't earn perfection and holiness. You have given me that entirely through your Son, Jesus Christ. And then enter His courts. So you go to the gate, the priest meets you, they take your offering. Now the courtyard, this space that remained there, was all kinds of space that the priests used to use. They had the water, they had the altar set over there. And then as you went further in, then they had the Holy of Holies, which only the high priest could actually enter into. There was a holy place and the Holy of Holies. It was like a smaller tent within the larger tent. And within that first part of the tent, that's where the bread was placed. That's where the lampstand was. That's where the incense altar was. And all those things had to be maintained by the priests. So enter His gates with thanksgiving. Enter His courts with praise. Now I want to praise him because of the sacrifice he provided for me. Does that make sense? So I'm coming in, right? In the Old Testament picture, I'm coming in with an offering as an act of faith for an offering that God will provide for me in Jesus Christ. And now that leads me to praise. And if we have entered with thanksgiving and now we have stepped into praise, praise eventually leads to worship. And worship, of course, is the most intimate part of it all. That's that part where only the high priest could go. If you looked at the tabernacle of Moses, it was this large space, and then you went to a smaller space and then a really tiny space. That's because worship is just you and God. It's just me and God. And it's me responding to who he is and what he's done. It's just me marveling at his character, at his nature, and it's just him and I, face to face, heart to heart, and I'm giving my complete response to him because I'm receiving full revelation of who he is. So thankfulness is so important on our teams, and it's so important. I've often said to my team and my leaders, hey, if you ever get stuck in just leading worship, or you're in a worship service and you just can't get it going, you're feeling stuff, you're going through life, you gotta just follow the recipe. Start with thanksgiving. Get to Thanksgiving and remember what Jesus has done. You gotta start there. And as you get into Thanksgiving, you move into praise, and then praise leads us to worship. I wanna kind of close with this idea because I think it's so important. It's hard to give thanks for something you feel you're entitled to. And if we forget that grace is given to us through Jesus Christ, if we forget that salvation is given to us as a gift, thankfulness cannot be conjured up. Thankfulness doesn't get stirred up because I feel I'm owed those things. And salvation is a gift from God. God doesn't owe it to us. We can't earn it, and we can't pay him back for it. We can only receive it, or we could reject it. But it's a gift only given by God, and we receive it by faith. So when you realize that, thankfulness is the only true response, because it's like gratefulness. You can't really be grateful for something you feel somebody owes you. There's a kind of a mindset that there's an awareness and a revelation that you realize, wow, this has been given to me, and this cost someone else something. And so now I receive it with an attitude of gratitude and with thankfulness. So we enter the gates with thanksgiving. We go into his courts with praise. And as we do that, that takes us into the most intimate part of our connection with God, which is responding to who he is with our worship. So I hope that in the seasons where you feel stuck, maybe you're pastoring other people that get stuck in worship, you can also remind them, hey, get back to thankfulness. Remember what Christ has done, and then give him praise for the things he will do, has done, will continue to do, and then respond to him in worship for who he is. And that's the joy of what we get to do week in and week out. I hope that helps you from my heart to yours. Until next time.